Almost 10 years ago, rumors of a new Dragon Ball movie had begun to pop up on the internet, and as we all know, in 2013, those rumors would come to fruition in the form of Battle of Gods. It marked a brand new rebirth for the Dragon Ball franchise and explored what had been the source of thousands of fanfics: the 10-year gap between the end of the battle with Buu and Goku fighting with Oob at the World Martial Arts Tournament. While the idea was really amazing at first, seeing what the various Z Warriors were up to during the officially unexplored period in the actual timeline, if we're being honest, by the events of the revival of Frieza, it wore off quite a little bit. The reintroduction of Frieza was amazing. I enjoyed it as a Frieza fan, but the issue that we had was the lack of stakes. Now, anybody who knows me knows that I'm usually one of the very first to defend stories that give away the ending at the very beginning of a story, or they use the flash forward sequences in order to build up hype. But I always preface what I say with this with two warnings. It has to be done correctly, and with good writing, it can build a sense of conflict. Now, I love Dragon Ball, but I'll be the first one to say it's not brilliant writing, but more so a story by an exploratory writer who has moments of brilliance. However, it's time for us to go past the end of the Z story, and honestly, it's long since been the time that we need to go beyond the end of Z, and I'll explain to you why this is the biggest missed opportunity in Dragon Ball Super, and why really and truly we should have skipped past the end of Z after the events of no later than the Universe 6 tournament. Now, Dragon Ball Super has had some amazing concepts that couldn't truly be realized in my opinion because of where the events actually took place in the actual Dragon Ball's timeline. So like I said before, with good writing, stories that take this approach, they can work, and it's been done in classic literature, and it's been done in some manga formats. But with what we've had in Dragon Ball Super so far, arcs like the Zamasu arc and the Tournament of Power arc, they would have held more weight if they were set after Goku left to train with Oob. The idea of there being a rogue Kaioshin who wants to destroy mortals and basically wiped out all the gods of destruction in another timeline and ended up destroying future Trunks' entire timeline, it would have hit home a lot more if there would have been a true threat that everything truly could end, and that the peace that Goku worked so hard to establish was gonna be undone, especially if the story did a better job of fleshing out Zamasu instead of what we got in the anime, which was a bare bones treatment to try and get Zamasu over. I really feel like further exploring the character in greater detail and giving him more of an arc than what we had could have been something that could have made Zamasu arguably the best villain that we had in Dragon Ball. I really feel like that's the biggest wasted opportunity that we could have had. On one hand, the Trunks timeline being destroyed was the right idea for a payoff, which does show that Akira Toriyama still has some storytelling instincts, and I definitely think that when you look at what Toyotaro did in the manga, he's definitely got an idea for how to handle a climax. But there's another thing you have to look at from here too. So the idea that there should be consequences for messing with time travel and messing with stuff that deals with the gods when it comes to time travel in that instance, and the fact that not every hero's story does end happily, but it had a shit payoff because Zeno was the one that wiped out everything. I really feel like there should have been a better way to resolve that than to have Zeno just pop up and Zeno be the one that destroys everything. Now, when you look at the Tournament of Power, I also feel like it would have had a better payoff if it was set in this era as well. The idea that Goku would have had to spend several years training to master Ultra Instinct and finally pulling off the ability during the Jiren battle would have hit home that much harder after the fact, because we're in a part of the timeline where we don't know the actual outcome. Also, it wouldn't feel like as big of an ass pull to see Goku use Ultra Instinct Omen / Ultra Instinct Sign and then use Master Ultra Instinct because of how long it took him to acquire this power. Now, granted, we do need to say this much though, okay? So we've seen Goku master abilities in a much shorter time period than that. I'm fully aware of that, so don't flame me in the comment section on that, but the delayed gratification is something that could have worked here, and I also think that that's why what you see with Goku currently doing in the manga, where he's using the abilities of Ultra Instinct in his different transformed states, is something where it's just like you're still seeing him work towards being able to fully master and tap into it at will for a prolonged period of time. The fact is that it does feel like it's earned because you're in a situation where you're seeing him work towards it. Even after all the training with Mirrors, even after the extended training with Whis, you're still seeing Goku work to improve himself. So I think this could have been something where, again, delayed gratification could have worked here. Now, the same thing is true for the Broly movie, the Moro arc, and the current Granola arc of the Dragon Ball Super manga. If these stories are placed after the Z portion of the timeline, it gives Toyotaro and Toriyama more freedom to actually play around with the story because they're not limited to the confines of being stuck in one particular part of the timeline, knowing that you got to work towards that and you need to actually tie everything up in a nice little ribbon. The chaos that comes from the escalating threats will have real stakes by going this route of skipping past the end of Z. Also, there's the possibility of exploring more of the lore with the gods and the angels. We know that Oob possesses God Ki at this point, based on the end of the Moro arc, but what other ramifications and changes or slight tweaks could there be made with Oob being a reincarnation? There's more to the actual story that you can play with at this point. And I also feel like, again, actually seeing Goku training Oob, that could be something that could work because we're getting a better opportunity to actually see more of Oob's character. Now, the specter of Frieza and the Frieza reassembling the Frieza Force Empire is something that would hold more weight now because we aren't all sitting around wondering when is Goku likely going to kill Frieza because we know that the world was at peace during the end of Z. The idea that Frieza is still out there building up an army is something where that could have actually worked at that point as well. He would have been brought back during the Tournament of Power, which would have been set after the end of Z, and the idea that he's still out there in space after the fact, that makes him an even bigger threat. Going past this part in the timeline, allowing Frieza to be off in space as a distant threat like Vegeta warned in the Broly movie, it again holds more weight, and honestly it's a lot more believable if years after the Tournament of Power, Frieza shows up ready to challenge Goku and Vegeta. We also would get a chance to see Goten and Trunks actually aged up at this point in the story, which is something I feel is very important. Essentially, you would have Pan be able to replace the almost mandatory requirement to have a younger cast member in the actual series. Another thing is the fact that Pan would be allowed to truly reach her potential if we went past this part in the timeline. While I personally don't mind Pan from Dragon Ball GT, there is a lot of hate for that version of the character. This gives us the opportunity to see what Toriyama and Toyotaro's idea of what Pan could have potentially be as we see Pan age up as well. In my opinion, part of what made experiencing Dragon Ball GT so great for the very first time was the very case I'm making here, that raising the stakes actually meant something, and honestly, the journey of GT for me is slightly better than Dragon Ball Super for this reason. And for full disclosure, I already knew how Dragon Ball GT ended based off of what you saw back during the dark ages of the internet, as well as Pojo's unofficial Dragon Ball Z guide that came out before we even got the Android saga of the Dragon Ball Z anime, in English at least. But getting back to it, I can't help but feel as if Moro and Zamasu and the Tournament of Power wasn't wasted due to their timeline placement. The idea of Zeno on a whim blowing up a universe holds more weight if it's set in this post-Z timeline. The expansion of there being other Dragon Balls and a character like Granola who used the Dragon Balls to become the strongest character in the universe, but he's got a time limit because of what he has to sacrifice his life force for, and the potential of 7-3 returning is another thing that works better conflict wise because these are very legitimate problems and the concepts are good enough that the writing doesn't need to rely on let's create suspension by setting these events before a time period where readers know it's a time of peace, because readers will wonder, how did we actually get here? I'd say that would work if it truly felt like we were building towards something and there was connective tissue between these events. However, I really feel like this is the bare bones minimum. I don't think that this is great storytelling. I still enjoy Dragon Ball, but I'm also still willing to call out the faults on it. Perhaps if we had more of the angel and god mythos that was explored and you saw more of a threat like Zamasu, I feel like that was a wasted opportunity right there. I feel like if it was further explored, that could be something that works. However, that's just my thoughts on this. Let me know how you feel down in the comment section below. But as always, guys, if you like anything I had to say, don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much for watching to the end. Have an awesome day, guys.